My sister and I applied for the same internship, but she got picked after sabotaging my portfolio. Don't take it personally, she whispered. 3 weeks later, her boss called me in with one shocking question. I mean, don't take it personally, she said, standing in my doorway, holding a to-go cup like it was some kind of peace offering. What? I blinked. She shrugged. It's just business. You'll land somewhere. I didn't reply. I couldn't. I watched her walk off like nothing had happened, like she hadn't stolen something from me with a smile on her face. That conversation replayed in my mind over and over again for the next 3 weeks. When I think back on how it all started, it doesn't feel like a story about a job or even a betrayal. It feels like a slow unraveling of trust, of the idea that blood really is thicker than water, of the belief that some relationships are unbreakable. My name's Marlene. I'm 34, a graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon. I've spent the last decade building up a respectable career, not flashy, not high-paying, but solid. After the small agency I worked for closed during a dry quarter last year, I found myself freelancing again, piecing together jobs, hoping for something more permanent. A few months ago, I saw an opening at Hawthorne and Bell. Anyone in creative fields on the West Coast has heard of them. Big clients, polished work, a reputation for turning interns into full-time stars. The internship was unpaid, yes, but the opportunity was a foot in the door I desperately wanted. I started pulling together my best work for the portfolio. Projects I'd completed for eco-brands, clean minimalist layouts, and identity designs I'd labored over for weeks. This was my shot. Enter Ava. She's my younger sister by 3 years. Always the social butterfly, always the creative one, at least according to our mother, because she was more expressive, louder, wore bolder colors. Ava had just moved back to Portland after a breakup and a failed career attempt in Austin. She was crashing with a friend, in between things, and suddenly one day over coffee she said, "Oh hey, I applied for that internship too." I laughed. I thought she was joking. She wasn't. She barely had a portfolio. She hadn't worked in design since she dropped out of art school. But she had charm. She could walk into a room and have people eating out of her hand in minutes. I was wary, but I told myself we both had a right to try. What I didn't realize was that Ava wasn't just applying. She was watching. Watching me work late into the night, watching my process, asking innocent questions about what I was submitting. And one day, she crossed a line. I didn't know it then, of course. I only found out later that while I stepped out of my apartment during a phone call, leaving my laptop open and my drive mounted, she copied my files to a USB. And then, somehow, she corrupted the final file I submitted. I had no idea until I got the rejection email. I was stunned. I stared at my screen for a long time, trying to make sense of it. My gut said something was off. I went back and checked the file I'd sent. What should have been a sleek, beautifully designed branding project for a sustainable clothing company was unreadable. It was gibberish. Layouts broken, images gone, even the file name was changed. I sat on the floor of my living room for a long time. Just sitting. Just breathing. And then, Ava showed up. Big smile. They picked me. I congratulated her. What else could I do? Then she leaned in and whispered those words, "Don't take it personally." It was like being slapped. She was daring me to react. She wanted to see if I'd burn it all down. But I didn't. I smiled. I nodded. I closed the door after her and sat back down on the floor, numb. The weeks that followed were difficult. I questioned myself. Was I being paranoid? Had I submitted the wrong file myself? Was I losing it? But then I got the email. Subject, follow-up, portfolio work, Hawthorne and Bell. They asked if I was available to come in. In person. No details. I went, nerves in my throat. I remember the receptionist giving me a curious look, as though she knew something I didn't. I was shown into a glass-walled conference room, minimalist and sleek, the city skyline stretching out behind the man seated across from me. Elliot Crane. Creative director. Sharp eyes, no nonsense. He didn't mince words. One of our interns presented a branding project that seemed, well, too good. Too experienced. I started digging. Her name is Ava, correct? My throat tightened. He opened a folder and slid it toward me. Inside was a printed version of my project. The real version. Not the corrupted file. The one she had presented as her own. I believe this is yours. He didn't ask. He stated it. Like he already knew. I told him everything. Not in anger, not in hysteria. I just laid it out, what happened, how I discovered the corrupted file, how I had suspected it was hampered but couldn't prove it. He listened. Then he looked at me and asked, how would you feel about joining the team, not as an intern, but full-time? I walked out of Hawthorne and Bell that afternoon in a daze. Not because I didn't believe it had happened, but because it had felt inevitable, in some way. Like the truth had just been waiting for the right moment to surface, like water finding its level. Still, I didn't celebrate. Not yet. The weight of everything hadn't lifted. If anything, it pressed down harder. I hadn't spoken to Ava since that day she smirked in my doorway and left with the internship. Now, 3 weeks later, I knew she'd been caught. Elliot hadn't said so outright, but the way he framed everything made it clear they were taking it seriously. He didn't need to tell me she was being let go, I could read it between the lines. That evening, I stared at my phone for a long time. I didn't know if I wanted to reach out or wait for her to come to me. I wasn't looking for an apology. Deep down, I knew Ava didn't have it in her to say sorry. Not really. She was one of those people who could rationalize anything. And in her mind, she probably saw this as fair game. A competitive move. But this wasn't a chess match. This was my career. Later that night, a message finally came through. Guess you got what you wanted. Congrats. No apology. No explanation. Just bitterness. She didn't even ask how I found out. I didn't respond. I spent the weekend alone. Portland was having one of its moody, rainy stretches, the kind that makes the sidewalks feel like they're exhaling. I walked for hours through the Pearl District, thinking about all the versions of Ava I'd known. The little girl who used to climb into my bed after nightmares. The teenager who borrowed my clothes and left lipstick stains on the collars. The young woman who always needed a couch to crash on after another impulsive decision. And now, the person who stole from me without blinking. I didn't feel anger, exactly. What I felt was grief. Grief for the relationship I thought we had. When Monday rolled around, I walked into Hawthorne and Bell as their new associate designer. Not an intern. Not someone starting at the bottom. They trusted me. Elliot made that clear when he introduced me to the team, no mention of Ava, no awkward questions. Just a clean slate. Still, I could feel it. A shift in the room. A few people had known Ava for those 3 weeks she was there. Maybe they liked her. Maybe they were confused about why she was gone. Maybe they suspected something. I didn't ask. I kept my head down. I worked. I did what I always do, let my work speak. Over the next few weeks, things started to fall into place. My designs got positive feedback. I was looped into bigger projects. I was even asked to contribute to an upcoming pitch for a major client. I had gone from being freelance and flailing to standing in a sleek meeting room, pointing at a screen with confidence, surrounded by people who respected my ideas. And then, out of nowhere, I got a call from my mother. She was calm at first, casual even. Then she said, "Ava told me you got the job." I paused. It wasn't a job she was ever qualified for. That was all I said. No details. I didn't throw her under the bus. But my mother, true to form, pressed. You know she was really hurt, right? She said she was humiliated. She brought that on herself, I said quietly. My mother sighed, like I was being cold. Like I hadn't just been stabbed in the back. That internship meant a lot to her. I couldn't help myself. Not enough to earn it honestly. Silence. Then, maybe you two need to talk. I didn't respond. Because I knew we weren't ready. Not yet. A few days later, a mutual friend of Ava's and mine, someone from the local creative community, reached out. She'd heard about what happened. She was sympathetic, but also a little stunned. Did she really submit your work as hers? Yes. There was a pause on her end. She said you stole her ideas. That stopped me cold. She said what? She's telling people she shared the project with you first and you took it, changed a few things, and sent it in behind her back. I was stunned, but I shouldn't have been. This was Ava. Always rewriting the story, always making herself the underdog. I have timestamps, file metadata, client permissions, contracts. Everything. I figured. I just thought you should know. The call ended. I sat there for a long time, not angry, just tired. I realized something that day. Ava didn't just hinder my work, she tried to rewrite the narrative. She couldn't bear the idea of being the villain in someone else's story, even if she'd earned the role. I started keeping records. I backed up my emails, stored my files in multiple places, and created a private archive. Not out of fear, but out of caution. Because once someone shows you who they really are, it's dangerous to pretend otherwise. The next time Ava texted, it was short. I guess we're not sisters anymore. I sat with that message for a while. Then I turned my phone over, face down, and got back to work. I didn't reply to her message. Not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I knew there was nothing I could say that she'd hear. Ava had always been good at twisting reality to protect herself. And if I responded, even kindly, it would turn into something else. Another narrative where she was the victim and I was cold, unfeeling, spiteful. She didn't want a conversation. She wanted confirmation that she still had a hold on me. So I left it. But it weighed on me. Not her silence, her story. The one she was telling everyone else. In the weeks that followed, I started hearing more of it. Through mutual friends, old classmates, even a former coworker of mine who ran into her at a cafe and got cornered into a very one-sided catch-up. She wasn't just suggesting that I had stolen her ideas, she was actively painting me as conniving. Calculated. The sister who couldn't stand to see her succeed. She said you always resented her growing up, my old coworker said over coffee, eyes wary. I let out a breath and just shook my head. Did you believe her? He hesitated. No. But I think other people might. That's what scared me, not losing people's favor, but losing the truth. Watching it be replaced by a version where Ava was the one with the broken heart, not the one who had broken something in me. Meanwhile, work at Hawthorne and Bell was going better than I'd imagined. I wasn't just doing design, I was trusted with vision. Elliot pulled me into brand strategy sessions, asked for my input during client presentations. It wasn't flashy, but it was exactly what I'd always wanted, to be taken seriously by people who cared about quality. One Thursday afternoon, just as I was shutting down for the day, Elliot stopped by my desk. You've got a visitor in the lobby. I blinked. A visitor? He gave me a strange look. Didn't say her name. Just said she's your sister. My stomach sank. I walked to the lobby slowly, heart pounding. Ava stood there, arms crossed, eyes darting. Her hair was up, but messier than usual. She looked tired. And angry. I won't come up. I just wanted to talk for 5 minutes. I nodded toward the sidewalk. We stepped outside into the chill spring air, the sky that soft, overcast gray that always smelled faintly like rain in Portland. You win, she said immediately. I didn't respond. Just wait. You got the job. You got everything. You don't even have to tell anyone what I did. I'm already the bad guy. She said it like it was a badge she'd been forced to wear. Like the consequences had nothing to do with the choices she made. You told people I stole your work, I said. She flinched. I was angry. That doesn't make it true. She looked down. I didn't think you'd actually get it. I thought I had to level the playing field. Level the playing field. Like we were in some invisible competition, and I was always a few steps ahead. It didn't matter that I had spent a decade building my slaughters, while she bounced from job to job. It didn't matter that I had worked overtime, underpaid, through holidays and heartbreak and burnout. All she saw was that I had something she didn't. I would have helped you, I said. If you had asked, I would have helped you with your portfolio. I would have spent all night working on it with you. She didn't say anything. That's what hurts the most, I said quietly. Not that you hampered me. That you didn't think I'd want to see you succeed. Ava blinked, fast, like she might cry. But she didn't. I just felt like, you always get it together. And I'm always a mess. And I didn't want to be a mess again. I looked at her for a long time. Part of me still wanted to hug her. That's the worst part of betrayal, it doesn't slaughter love right away. It just makes it harder to find under the rubble. But I didn't hug her. I didn't reach for her hand. I just said, that wasn't the way to fix it. She nodded. I know. There was a long silence between us. Then she turned, said bye, Marlene, and walked down the street, disappearing into the crowds of the late afternoon. I watched her go. I didn't follow. When I got home that night, I pulled out the box under my bed, the one with old photos, birthday cards, and a few of her letters from when she lived in San Diego. I sat on the floor and leafed through them slowly. Our faces, smiling at beaches, holding cotton candy, tangled in blankets watching Disney movies. We were kids. And then we weren't. And somewhere in between, something cracked. I still haven't decided what to do with the box. After Ava left that afternoon, I didn't go back to the office. I walked for over an hour through downtown Portland, my fingers numb in the wind. I stopped by a food cart I hadn't been to in years, ordered a curry I didn't really want, and sat under the awning while the sky threatened rain. She had said what she needed to say. Or at least what she thought would patch things up. But what she didn't say lingered louder. No real apology. No admission of how far she'd gone. Just that she was angry and didn't think I'd get it. As if that justified burning the bridge. Still, that part of me, the big sister in me, kept wondering, had she come because she regretted it? Or just because her version of the story was starting to unravel? When I finally got home, there was a message from my father waiting. Call me when you can. We need to talk about Ava. That was all it said. I hadn't really spoken to him since everything happened. My parents had always had a complicated dynamic with us. My mom tended to coddle Ava, maybe because she worried she couldn't handle things. My dad, on the other hand, had always been harder to read. Stern, quiet, never particularly warm. But when he gave you attention, you knew it meant something. I called him the next morning, on my walk to work. Hi, I said when he picked up. You talked to your sister, he said. No greeting. I did. She told your mother you're refusing to make amends. I stopped in my tracks on the corner of 10th and Burnside. Amends for what? There was a long pause. I told her she needed to take responsibility. That it was wrong. She admitted it. But your mother thinks this is getting blown out of proportion. I nearly laughed. She stole my work. I know. She tried to ruin my career. I know that too, he said, more quietly. I don't think this is something I can fix, Dad. Not like before. He didn't argue. That, more than anything, surprised me. I'm not asking you to fix anything, he said. I just don't want you to carry it like it's your fault. You did nothing wrong. It was the first time I'd heard him say something like that. Ever. She said something yesterday, I murmured. She said she didn't want to be a mess again. She's been telling herself that for a long time, he replied. The problem is, she doesn't see the difference between failure and consequence. I didn't say anything. But that line stuck with me all day. That weekend, I visited my parents for dinner. I hadn't been over in a few months, and I could feel the tension before I even got out of the car. My mom opened the door and hugged me tightly, a little too tightly, like she was overcompensating. She set the table with all my childhood favorites: rosemary chicken, roasted carrots, her famous cornbread. It felt almost manipulative, but I let it slide. Dinner was pleasant in that uncomfortable, performative way. My mom asked about work. My dad asked if I'd had the car's oil changed. Small talk, dancing around the obvious. Finally, as the plates were being cleared, my mom broke the silence. Ava's had a hard time lately. I took a sip of my wine and said nothing. She's not proud of what she did, she added. She told me she doesn't think she did anything wrong, I said calmly. She told me she regrets it. I glanced at my dad. He was watching me carefully but staying quiet. I'm not sure what you want me to do, I said to my mom. Maybe just talk to her? Help her get back on her feet. She's a grown woman. She's your sister. And I was her sister when she stabbed me in the back, I replied. Not angry. Just tired. My mom blinked, surprised. Maybe by my tone. Maybe that I wasn't melting under the guilt like I used to. After a long pause, my dad finally spoke. We can't keep protecting her from her own behavior. She needs to live with the outcome. That's how she'll learn. She might not, I said softly. No, he admitted. She might not. That was the first moment I truly realized my father saw her clearly. Maybe he always had. He just didn't know what to do about it. After dinner, my mom handed me a small box before I left. It's some old things you left here. Thought you might want them. I took the box, said thank you, and drove home through the dark streets, headlights washing over familiar corners and long-forgotten turns. Later, I opened the box. It was full of old sketchbooks, art school brochures, and one particular item that stopped me cold, a spiral-bound notebook Ava and I had shared when we were kids. We used to pass it back and forth, writing notes to each other in secret code. It was all hearts, cartoons, inside jokes. On the last page, in Ava's handwriting, were the words, "If we ever stop being sisters, it's because the world got too loud. Not because we stopped caring." I closed the notebook gently and set it aside. We weren't kids anymore. And the world wasn't just loud, it was messy, full of choices and consequences and shifting lines between love and loyalty and self-preservation. Thank you for staying with me through all of this. I never expected to write it all out like this, but something about Reddit makes it easier to be honest with strangers than it ever was with people I knew. So here's the end of the story, a story about betrayal, consequence, and, yes, a little bit of revenge. The kind that doesn't hurt anyone physically, but hits exactly where it's deserved. After that dinner at my parents' house, things stayed quiet for a while. Ava didn't reach out again. I didn't expect her to. My mother stopped pushing. My dad, surprisingly, started calling me more often, not long chats, just simple check-ins. Asking how work was going, reminding me to winterize my pipes when the cold set in. His way of saying he was proud, I think. Professionally, I was thriving. At Hawthorne and Bell, I moved from associate designer to project lead in under a year. Elliot trusted me. Clients trusted me. I got to hire 2 junior designers to assist me, and I made it a point to mentor them the way no one ever had for me. That's where things took an unexpected turn. One of those juniors, Nico, came into my office one day, holding a printout. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said, "but I was Googling portfolio layouts for inspiration and I found this site. Someone selling template bundles, and one of the examples looks exactly like your Willow and Flint project. I took the printout from him. My stomach dropped. It was my work. My original branding package. Except it had been renamed and lightly recolored. The layout, typography, even the quirky detail in the icon set, identical. Except now, it was being sold as a template on a marketplace site under the username designed by A.R. Ava Reynolds. I thanked Nico and told him I'd handle it. He shrugged, not fully understanding the history behind the look on my face. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the screen. She hadn't learned a thing. She'd taken the same project she was caught stealing, changed the name, and was now selling it online as part of a premium branding pack for $79.99 a pop. And people were buying it. For a moment, I felt the familiar mix of anger and disappointment swirl in my chest. But then, it settled into something sharper. Cleaner. Clarity. This wasn't just personal anymore. It was professional theft. And I had the tools to handle it properly. I reached out to my lawyer, not a pit bull, but a sharp, level-headed IP specialist I'd worked with through the agency before. She looked at the site, the files, my originals, and said, "Oh, she's not even being subtle. This is a textbook copyright violation." I provided everything, metadata from my original files, timestamps, client contracts, project drafts, internal submission receipts to Hawthorne and Bell. Even photos of my process sketches. She built the case cleanly, piece by piece. We issued a takedown notice through the marketplace. It was accepted within 48 hours. But we didn't stop there. The lawyer also sent a cease and desist letter directly to the email associated with the account. A copy went to Ava's personal address too. Standard stuff, but the weight of it, I knew, would hit differently this time. And then, in what I can only describe as karma showing off, the cherry on top dropped into my lap the following week. One of the newer boutique agencies in town, Rook and Mare, reached out to me for a collaboration on a joint campaign. I'd heard they were growing fast and trying to build a creative collective vibe. I was intrigued. When I met with their creative director, a woman named Felice, she mentioned in passing, "Funny story, someone applied to our studio earlier this year with almost the exact same branding piece you did for Willow and Flint. Different name, but we recognized it immediately." I blinked. "Do you remember her name?" She raised an eyebrow. "Ava Reynolds. I think she said you two were cousins?" I laughed out loud. It just came out, unexpected and full-bodied. "Not cousins," I said. "Sisters." Felice laughed too, shaking her head. "Well, if it's any consolation, we didn't even call her back. Anyone willing to lie at that level? Not worth the risk." She paused. "But you? You're the one we actually want to work with." That's when it hit me. Ava wasn't just playing with fire. She'd been burning bridges before she even knew she was standing on them. A week later, I got another text from her. I hadn't heard from her in months. "Did you really need to go that far?" I stared at it. Laughed again. Closed it without responding. Because here's the thing, I didn't go far. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't air out our dirty laundry. I didn't even tell people how she stole from me until it became a legal issue. All I did was hold her accountable. She did the rest to herself. And that, in the end, was the most satisfying part. She couldn't blame me anymore. Not really. Not when every step of the fallout came from her own decisions, her own lies, her own shortcuts. I haven't heard from her since that last message. I doubt I will. My parents don't bring her up anymore, at least not to me. I know they still talk to her, but there's a strained distance in the way they mention your sister instead of Ava. Like they're still figuring out how to love someone who doesn't know how to be honest. As for me? I'm good. I wake up every day knowing that I earned where I am. That no one handed it to me, and no one can take it away. And when I pass the Willow and Flint display in downtown Portland, my work, my designs, still proudly in use, I smile. Because I didn't need to destroy her to win. I just needed to keep walking, even after she tried to trip me.